Let's talk about getting crisp corners in our sewing. Welcome, I do sewing and DIY related content, and today we're talking about getting crisp corners in our sewing. So for this, I'm just going to be using a plain cotton material that I had on hand. So this is pretty lightweight fabric, and I'm just going to be cutting out some squares that we can use for this little test project to see, is there a better way to get these nice crisp corners in our sewing? So for this, I've cut out 3 of them, as you can see here, and our first one is just going to be the sort of control option. So I'm just going to be taking both these squares, matching them with right sides together, and then pinning up 3 of these edges. So I'm just going to be going through, as you can see, using my little quilting clips and just pinning it up, and then I will just sew 3 of these edges all the way around. So this is going to be our one that we can compare everything else to see how it ends up looking. Now for the second option, I'm going to be doing it the exact same way as the first, but we will be sewing this a little differently on our sewing machine. So there's some thought that if you have a smaller stitch length, when you get to those corners, it can actually make it look like a little crisper of corner. So we're going to be trying that technique out for that one. And then the third, I'm going to be using a thicker thread. So I have this here, I'm going to be cutting out 2 pieces of that thread, and then we're going to be laying this out very specifically. So I'm going to take one piece of my fabric, I'm going to fold over this thread, so you can see it has a little fold on one end. The folded end will be laying outside of the fabric with those 2 edges of the thread being inside. And then I'm just going to place the other piece of the square on top with right sides together. So you can see the threads kind of overhanging on the outside. This is how we want it to look. And then I'm just going to be pinning this up and taking those 3 stitches as well. So now I'm going to go over to my sewing machine, and this is the test, sort of our control case. So I'm just going to sew this up like I normally would. So doing a straight stitch, back stitching at the beginning, using normal stitch length, just going through, taking that seam. Then when I'm about 1/4 of an inch from the edge, I'm going to put my needle into the fabric, lift up my presser foot, turn this 90 degrees to pivot, and then just continue on my way. So very normal sewing, I'm not doing anything crazy here. And this will be our control. Now for the second option, I'm going to backstitch at the beginning, and then when I get down to the end, when I'd have about 1/4 of an inch left, I'm going to decrease my stitch length. I'm going to go to about like a 1.6, and then I'm going to sew on the diagonal, so just changing about 45 degrees, doing that until I get too close to the edge of the second piece, and then just continue on my way, but I'm now going to increase the stitch length back to 2.5, and then sew again, repeating this pattern for the second edge, and then continue sewing. We'll see how that looks. And then the third option, I'm going to be sewing this very similar to how I did for the very first one. So just taking 3 straight stitches, being sure to pivot at the corners. So for this, I am just going to show you what it sort of looks like as up close. So as you can see, I'm just taking a straight stitch, very simple here, not doing anything crazy with my sewing machine. So now let's bring all of our squares over. So I have all 3 here. We're going to start with that sort of control case. I'm just going to trim off at a diagonal some of that extra fabric. This is normally what I do to help reduce some of that bulk. I'm going to trim off some of these threads as well. And I'm just going to turn this right side out. So here is what my little square looks like. You can see upon turning it right side out the first time, corners not so crisp. So I'm going to go through. You can get tools to help you with this to kind of push those corners out. I like to use sometimes just like a pen or pencil that I have on hand. And then you can also get like a little pin and just very carefully push the fabric out. This does take a little bit of time, and you want to be sure you're not going to snag your fabric, but it's another option. And then of course you could press this, and here is what your corners would look like. So it's looking pretty good. Now I'm going to try that second square where we changed the stitch length. I'm going to trim some of that fabric down again as well, and then just turn this right side out. And in doing this, I found that it actually worked a lot better than I expected. I think that this would be a great alternative for really thick fabrics because they have so much bulk to them. So that's definitely an option. And then our third use case where we use the thread, I'm just going to turn this right side out. I'm not trimming anything, and you'll kind of see why I do that in a second. And now I'm just going to pull both threads at the same time for one corner. And as you can see, the corner just pops out. And then I'm going to repeat this for the second corner. So if we had cut these, the string would have just fallen out and it wouldn't have helped us with that nice crisp corner. And then to remove the thread, you just pull one thread at a time. And here's what it looks like. So it was actually a lot faster and you got a really nice crisp corner with that. So let me know if you've tried any of these techniques. What is your go-to technique or tool for getting those nice crisp corners? That thread method definitely worked really quickly, so I think I may be using that going forward. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know what you want to see next. Thanks for watching.